So double masters equals double the reprint value, right? Let's take a look. What is up, Commander players? My name is Matt, and you're watching Top Commanders. So, after much deliberation, because of the whole COVID crisis, unfortunately, first week of school came back, so last week was a little hectic, so I'm trying to bring this video out as soon as I possibly can. I do apologize for the delay. But Double Masters is here. It's a reprint only set. This is supposed to be the year of Commander, so let's take a look and see what kind of value they gave us as far as reprints for Commander. But before I get into that, if you wish to support this channel, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to support this channel directly, be sure to visit patreon.com/topcommander. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look. So there's a lot of obviously this is just a full reprint set, but it's supposed to be the year of Commander, right? Which seems to mean quite a few things that has stirred up the community a little bit, especially in other formats, but that's for a different topic. But Double Masters is a reprint only set, so let's see what kind of good reprints we got for Commander. Now, there's a ton of cards in this set. I am not going to be covering every single Commander staple that got reprinted in this set. Just kind of the couple of the big name ones from each color that I kind of sifted through, because there's a ton of reprints and actually a ton of really good cards. So this video might be a little lengthy, but I'll try to make it as short and sweet as possible. But let's go ahead and get right into it. First off, we have Austere Command. Now, this is a modal spell, but it's a modal board wipe. This is one of the better board wipes to have in Commander. Granted, with some arguments, but considering that it's 4 generic, 2 white for a sorcery, and then you choose 2, not 1, you choose 2. Destroy all artifacts, destroy all enchantments, destroy all creatures with converted mana cost 3 or less, or destroy all creatures with converted mana cost 4 or greater. The versatility in that is just outrageous. Oh, you don't care if your artifacts get blown up, but somebody's going a little crazy? Yeah, blow up all artifacts. You also get something else with that. You can blow up all tokens. If maybe there's a bunch of tokens on the field. Destroy all creatures with CMC 3 or less. There goes all the tokens. And probably a few other hits. This is a great modal spell, a really good board wipe, especially for white. I mean, white's known for board wipes. It's not Cyclonic Rift, but it's pretty close, in all honesty. Next up, we have Land Tax. This is a 1 white for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent controls more lands than you, then you get to search your library for up to 3 basic lands, put them into your hand, and shuffle your library. Now, this is not ramp, obviously, but it helps you make sure that you have your land drops. And for a mono white deck, this is essentially card draw for a mono white deck, because that's 3 lands out of your library. You can thin the deck out, which technically doesn't make too much of a difference, but it's basically white's best card draw. It's 3 cards out of your library every turn. Granted, they're all lands, but it helps you get through your library a little bit quicker. And it keeps you out of full grip. So, and it's at a price tag. It's got the price tag that it has for a reason. So this is definitely a really good include for a reprint only set. Next up, Stoneforge Mystic. I'm not sure how many printings this thing has had, but it's been pricey for quite some time. Now, this card was big mainly because of, I believe Modern was the big one, because Stoneforge Mystic is part of a Modern deck, and it's used in especially commander decks that are equipment heavy. So Stoneforge Mystic is 1 and a white for a 1/2 core artificer. When Stoneforge Mystic enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library. You can pay 1 and a white, tap it, and you can put an equipment card from your hand onto the battlefield. So it kind of helps with cheating and mana cost. It's a tutor for any equipment. You can go fetch out your lightning greaves, swiftfoot boots, any of your sword of cards, just any kind of equipment that you're using. If you need that skull clamp, go get it. Stoneforge is just really, really good. Stonehewer Giant. This one, to be honest, I haven't really seen a whole lot of it in play in my experience. But, so Stonehewer Giant is 3 generic and 2 white for a 4/4 giant warrior. He has vigilance, and for 1 and a white and tap him, you can search your library for an equipment and put it onto the battlefield, attach it to a creature you control, then shuffle your library. This is so good on a few levels, and it's definitely priced properly for CMC and everything. So it tutors up the card, puts it into play, so it's cheating mana cost into play, and automatically equips it. So you're cheating cast, cheating equip, and tutoring. This is really, really good. I actually need to get a copy of this. But yeah, definitely a solid reprint. Wrath of God. I don't know when the last time this card got reprinted, but sorcery speed, 2 generic and 2 white, destroy all creatures, they cannot be regenerated. I was super mad when I found out they did not reprint Damnation, which is the black version of Wrath of God. Literally same text, just a black card instead of a white card. They need to reprint that one. Wrath of God is still a really good board wipe. It's been overshadowed by recent board wipes, but sometimes you just can't go wrong with the classics. Next up, Cyclonic Rift. One card that so many Commander players have been despising for the longest time, that can be dealt with by any counterspell, including the counter that does not counter, such as Narset's Reversal. So Cyclonic Rift is 1 generic and a blue for an instant. It says return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. It also overloads for 6 and a blue. You're paying the 6 and a blue. And you replace all instances of target for the word each. So it returns each non-land permanent that you don't control to its owner's hand for 7 mana at instant speed. We all know what this is. We all know this card. Everybody's had to have met a Cyclonic Rift at some point in their Commander career. Moving on. Force of Will. Holy crap, I'm kind of surprised. 3 generic and 2 blue for an instant. Counter target spell. Not joking, that is what it does, but with a twist. You may pay 1 life and exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay this spell's converted mana cost. So it's either a 5 mana counter target spell, or most of the time you're going to pay a life and exile a blue card and cast it for free. So Force of Will is more on a good thing for CEDH players, because this is a counterspell that is mostly seen by CEDH players. More casual tables technically don't run this too much. I mean, you might see it every once in a while for the casual player that just likes to throw money at the game and is not playing at the full CEDH level. But this is one of the most expensive counterspells and much needed reprint. And it got an alternate art that looked kind of interesting, I wasn't going to lie, but I still like the original artwork. But yeah, definitely a really great reprint. Next up, we have Master Transmuter. 3 generic and a blue for an artifact creature human artificer. And it's a 1/2. Pay a blue, tap it, return an artifact you control, to its owner's hand, you may put an artifact card from your hand onto the battlefield. This is something that you're going to use to cheat out big artifacts. Blightsteel Colossus, Wormcoil Engine, Noxious Gearhulk, any, Darksteel Forge, Mirror Battlesphere, whatever. Whatever's in your hand, you're going to use this to cheat it into play. That's what this card is used for. There's no arguing on that one because that's what it's used for. But I thought it was kind of interesting, and it definitely seemed like a lot of the theme from this set was artifact based, which I was trying to find reprints that were notable that didn't have to deal with artifacts, but it seemed like all the big ones, it was just an artifact themed reprint set, which is kind of odd, but I mean, much needed and much wanted, and I'm okay with this as a artifact player at heart. Alright, moving on to the next one, Pongify. This one, okay, so it's not a super expensive card, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Pongify is 1 blue for an instant. Destroy target creature. It can't be regenerated. Its controller creates a 3/3 green ape creature token. This is blue's removal for creatures. Now, most people know blue's removal as bounce it to its owner's hand, or, it's usually some sort of bounce effect. Put it at the top of the library, put it back into their hand, something like that. There are 3 cards that I could think of. If there's more that I don't know about, please let me know. Pongify, I believe it Rabid Hybridization, and Reality Shift. These are 3 blue instant speed removal spells that get rid of creatures. I believe two of them destroy, and Reality Shift exiles it. These are blue cards that most people need to be running more of. Granted, I know the price of them might be a little bit more than what you want to spend, but believe me, it's worth it because you don't want it to go back to their hand sometimes, so they could just recast it. Yes, technically you time walk them, you slow them down a little bit, but if you just need to get rid of it, then get rid of it. That's the best way to deal with it. But it was just something that I thought was worth mentioning, and is definitely a really good reprint to have. Next up, Ad Nauseum. 3 generic and 2 black for an instant. Reveal the top card of your library, and put that card into your hand. You lose life equal to its converted mana cost. You may repeat this process any number of times. Now, some people are probably out there like, what is this for? Alright, this kind of goes back to Force of Will. Only Force of Will is more known. Ad Nauseum is more of a CEDH level game card. A lot of CEDH players they usually use it in a deck that has very, very low mana curve. So it's got a lot of 0 drops, a lot of 1 drops, a lot of 2 drops. So they're not paying a ton of life till they find what they're looking for and get the combo pieces into their hand. It's typically what it's used for. I'm not sure what the price was, but it's definitely a reprint that probably was needed. It was probably getting to a price that shouldn't be at, give or take, but it's definitely used in CEDH gameplay, so CEDH players rejoice for the reprint, right? Alright, next up, Dark Confidant. 1 and a black for a 2/1 human wizard. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library. Put that card into your hand, you lose life equal to its converted mana cost. So this is a one-time deal ad nauseum effect. But it basically has like a Phyrexian Arena effect. Only you lose life equal to the CMC, not 1 life, draw a card. Just another draw engine that a lot of CEDH players will use. Because again, they don't have a lot of high CMC cards in their deck typically. Especially if they're going to use this. This is one that they kind of build around so they don't take too much of their life and kill themselves too fast. But another really good reprint because this one was getting up there in price. Oubliette. Apparently this was up to a $50 common. Uh, so they reprinted it and they reworded the text on it. 1 generic and 2 black for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, target creature phases out until Oubliette leaves the battlefield. Tap that creature as it phases in this way. Now, apparently, I did not realize this, but what you could do with this card is phase out somebody's commander, and because of the wording on phasing, it's not removing it, so you can't send it back to the command zone. So it gets rid of the opponent's commander until Oubliette leaves the battlefield. Seems kind of mean, but apparently that's the thing with that card. So that's why I thought it was worth mentioning for Commander, because I actually did not realize that until recently. Next up, we have Toxic Deluge. 2 generic and a black for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, pay X life. All creatures get -X, -X until end of turn. This is just a board wipe that gets around indestructible because it deals in -X, -X. So, and it's very versatile based on your life total, so it's just a really good board wipe to be using. Alright, next up. Unfortunately, this was put on my list. I didn't want to. I'm not a huge fan of it because of what it does. Blood Moon, 2 generic and a red for an enchantment. Non-basic lands or mountains. For all you 4-color and 5-color decks that don't run a lot of basics, this is your worst enemy. I understand, unless you're an artifact-heavy deck. So, yes, very big pain in the rear, and I don't like this card. If I had to pick a card to go on the ban list, it would be this one, because I don't like it. But, moving on. Imperial Recruiter, 2 generic and a red for a 1/1 human advisor. When he enters the battlefield, search your library for a creature card with power 2 or less. Reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle your library. So it's a tutor for any creature with power 2 or less. You could tutor up Peace to an Infinite combo. You could tutor up any creatures out of your deck for, like, say you're running Alesha who smiles at death. Really good card to use for a tutor effect. The fact that he's a 1/1, whenever he dies, you could bring him back with Alesha and you consistently tutor up the creature that you need with power 2 or less for Alesha. So, pretty good, decent card to be running. Apparently, from what I heard, this card had a $50 price tag at one point as well. So this reprint's very much needed. Next up, Mana Echoes. 2 generic and 2 red for an enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you may add an amount of mana equal to the number of creatures you control that share a creature type with it. So this one obviously can go infinite a lot of different ways. I don't see a reason why it wouldn't. Token decks, anything that's just sacking and bringing back stuff, I can see that being a problem. Yeah, Mana Echoes just is a really solid reprint as well. Sneak Attack, 3 generic and a red for an enchantment. You may pay 1 red and put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. That creature gains haste, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next instant. So you could do something really crazy like Sundial of the Infinite and just end the turn before the end phase and keep the creature on the field. Or you're just using it to cheat something into play, get a really big hit in, or get an ETB effect, something like that. So, next up, we have Court of Calling. 3 green and X, it has Convoke, so your creatures can help pay for this, which makes it really, really good. Search the library for a creature card with converted mana cost X or less and put it onto the battlefield. Shuffle your library. So, a tutor effect that cheats it into play, why not? It's, depending on what level you're playing at, it's just a really good tutor, or it's getting you your combo piece. That's basically how it goes. Next up, Doubling Season. 4 generic and a green for an enchantment. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens. If an effect would put 1 or more counters on a permanent you control, it puts twice that many counters on it. Yeah, this is just big in token decks or Super Friends decks in particular, just caring about the loyalty counters. It's been up and down in price for quite some time. I believe the highest I've seen it was about $65, give or take. But yeah, definitely needed a reprint again. Trying to keep that price down is one thing that we really need, especially for newer players trying to get into the game, or into the format in particular. And if they need a doubling season, they want to try to find it for a decent price. They don't want to spend too much money sometimes. And yeah, let's be honest, if you really, really enjoy Commander, you want to build multiple decks, and you don't want the cards to be too expensive that you can't, if you need a doubling season for this deck or for that deck, you could do the sleeve method, where you just alternate between decks, but sometimes that could take some time. But moving on, we have Exploration. 1 green for an enchantment. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Very cut and dry. Green ramp, that gives you an additional land drop. Nothing wrong with this. This is a solid card. Used in a lot of green decks, so why not? Next up, Noble Hierarch. 1 green for a 0/1 human druid. It has Exalted, which is whenever a creature you control attacks alone, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Tap, add green, white, or blue. So it's a mana dork that produces one of 3 colors with Exalted. It only produces green, white, blue. So this is usually used in a Bant deck or Bant plus whatever color, or a 5-color deck maybe would use this. I'm not entirely sure, but I know Bant decks love this card. It's a mana dork that gives them all 3 of their colors, so it's essentially a Birds of Paradise. But so the reason why I brought this up, Noble Hierarch at one point, I believe I heard it was reaching like somewhere between $30 and $60 or some ridiculous price. It was, I don't know why. I think it had something to do with a weird elf ball deck or something. I don't know the reason, but all I know is that this was a mana dork that costed way too much. Next up, Baleful Strix. So I didn't want to go too much into the multicolored cards. I wanted to try to stick to monocolored and the artifacts a little bit because they're more universal. But Baleful Strix is definitely a notable reprint. Blue and a black for an artifact creature bird. He's a 1/1. He has flying and death touch, and when he enters the battlefield, you draw a card. There's a lot of loops you can do with him to keep drawing a card, and the fact that he has flying and death touch, he kind of helps protect your board a little bit. He's a really great blocker. Or if you're feeling really squirrely, he can attack too. So, next up, Meddling Mage. Blue and a white for a human wizard that's 2/2. As Meddling Mage enters the battlefield, choose a non-land card name. Spells with the chosen name cannot be cast. Basically in Commander, you're choosing somebody's commander that hasn't been cast yet, naming it, and then they can't cast their commander. It's kind of mean, but, or if you know the deck well enough, you name a combo piece, if it's like an infinite combo deck, and stop them from comboing off. But, yeah, that's pretty much what that is. Alright. Blight Steel Colossus. We're in the artifacts. I'm aware that a lot of people don't like this, but this is a notable reprint. 12 mana for an 11/11 artifact creature golem, has trample, infect, and indestructible. If he would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, reveal him and shuffle it into its owner's library instead. So the line of text to shuffle it into the library is basically to just stop people from like discarding it and then find a way to like reanimate it. Which, come to find out recently, you can use Goblin Welder's ability in response to the trigger and spit them onto the battlefield. That was something that I did not know. But yeah, so this is he's been about he's usually hitting around the $80, $90, $100 range, somewhere around there. With the reprint, the reprints brought him down a little bit, but he's still kind of pricey, but definitely still a notable reprint. The infect is the biggest reason why most people don't like him, of course, because it only takes 10 infect damage and then you lose the game. And a lot of people try to say that you need to bump it up to 20. Have you tried killing the whole table with Infect? Uh, anyways, next card that I'm going to be on is Chromemox. 0 mana for an artifact. It has imprint. As it enters the battlefield, exile a non-artifact, non-land card from your hand. Tap, add 1 mana of any of the exiled card's colors. So this is just a fast mana rock. You discard a blue card and it taps for a blue, and yeah, it's just a fast mana rock. It was really expensive, in my opinion. Honestly, these are so expensive for no reason. Some of these are not. I understand CEDH players use these, especially Chromemox. Chromemox is the one that I'm not a huge fan of. The one that I like is going to be coming up a little bit later, though. But we'll get to that. Darksteel Forge. 9 mana for an artifact. Artifacts you control have indestructible. This is the Absent of Hope for all artifacts. Or Absent Angel of Hope for all artifacts. So, definitely, I mean, this card usually fluctuates between about 20 and 30 bucks. I'm not sure what its price has peaked at before, but it's still a pretty good reprint, especially for artifact decks. Expedition Map, I thought this was interesting because at one point I looked at the price tag on this card. It was a common, and it was hitting $7. There's a good reason for it, though. 1 generic mana for an artifact. You pay 2, tap, sack it, search your library for a land card, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. A land card. Not a basic. Just any land. I usually use this to go fetch out Academy Ruins and use Academy Ruins to put Expedition Map back on top, so I guarantee my land drop. It's kind of a weird, slow combo to, just guarantee your land drop, but it works. Okay, next up we have Manicrypt. 0 mana for an artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, flip a coin. If you lose the flip, Manicrypt deals 3 damage to you. Tap, add 2 colorless. So Soul Ring for 0 mana with a 50-50 shot of taking 3 damage. Yes, please. This is just another fast mana rock. It's really, really expensive. It really honestly shouldn't be as expensive as it is if they just reprint it a little bit more than they do. But honestly, I don't see a problem with this card. If you can have Ancient Tomb and Soul Ring in your deck, and Soul Ring comes in every Commander Precon, Manicrypt should be reprinted enough to get a little bit cheaper. Manicrypt, I don't see a reason why a lot of decks, not even just CEDH decks, just a lot of decks in general, shouldn't be running Ancient Tomb, Manicrypt, Soul Ring. Those are 3 really, really good fast ways to ramp out and do what you're going to do, because a lot of people don't like Manicrypts and Soul Rings, but the whole goal in Commander is to ramp and do big splashy effects. When you're running stuff like this, you can do your big splashy effects sooner. That's the thing. It's kind of hard to justify one side or the other, in all honesty. I don't personally have a problem with Manicrypt. The only drawback, in my opinion, is the potential to take damage. But the legal Mox that I like personally is Mox Opal. 0 mana for a legendary artifact. Has Metalcraft. Add 1 mana of any color. Activate this ability only if you control 3 or more artifacts. This is another fast mana rock. You have to have 3 artifacts out on the field, and it taps for any 1 color mana. Really, really good card. Really expensive for no reason again. I feel like it needs to be repaired a couple of times because the price is going down on this one. Next up. This one, unfortunately, is color specific. Sunforger. 3 mana for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +4/+0. It has an equip cost of 3. You can also pay a red and a white to unattach Sunforger. Search your library for a red or white instant with converted mana cost 4 or less, and cast that card without paying its mana cost, then shuffle your library. So this is a tutor that cheats mana cost by casting it for free, and it's any red or white instant. Now, a lot of people are like, well, what good is that? Utter End is 2, a white and a black. It's 4 mana. It's considered a white spell. You can use Stoneforger to get Utter End. Chaos Warp, Generous Gift. Anguish Unmaking. Any number of cards. Even a couple of counterspells. There's some blue and red counterspells that you could go fetch with this one. There's a lot of uses for this. Stoneforger is a really, really good piece of equipment. I know at one point the price of it went up to about $10. Just under the $10 mark, I believe. But it's really good equipment and needs to be reprinted. Next up, I was surprised when I found out that they did the whole Sword of series, the original Sword ofs. So, but today I'm not going to talk about all 5 of them. The 3 that I mainly see play is these 3. Sword of Feast and Famine, probably the most known one. 3 generic for an artifact equipment. Equip 2. Equip creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from black and green. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card and you untap all lands. So basically, it kind of helps you ramp and gets your opponent to discard a card and has protection from black and green. There's multiple uses and multiple reasons why this is good. Sword of Fire and Ice. This is the one that gives protection from red and blue. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you can deal 2 damage to any target and you draw a card. This is the good one as well because of the fact that it draws cards. Next up, this one I also see a lot of, Sword of Light and Shadow. It's not the most expensive, it's not one of the most expensive ones either, which is oddly enough, but it gives protection from white and black, and on damage to a player, it gains you 3 life, and you get to take a creature card from your graveyard and put it into your hand. So, the fact that it's protection from white and black, I feel also helps out with why it's so good, because Swords to Plowshares can't hit it, Utter End, Anguish Unmaking, Path to Exile, Generous Gift. If your opponent's using Murders, Tragic Slips, anything like that, they can't target it. So, really, really good. Wormcoil Engine, 6 mana for a 6/6 artifact creature worm, has Death Touch and Lifelink. When Wormcoil Engine dies, create a 3/3 worm with Death Touch and a 3/3 worm with Lifelink. This one is just really, really good for especially artifact-based decks. If you're looking for tokens, this is a really good card for that. And it kind of gives you some longevity with the Death Touch and Lifelink, and then you hit the tokens with you get a Death Touch token and a Lifelink token. Just really good in general. Alright, next up, they reprinted Academy Ruins, folks. It's about time. Legendary Land, tap to add 1 colorless, or you pay 1 generic and a blue and tap it, put target artifact card from your graveyard on top of your library. This land, I believe last time when I bought mine was about $35. They weren't super cheap, but with this reprint, hopefully they'll go down a little bit more. And the next card, well, the last card I'm going to be talking about in this video is going to be Maze of Ith. It's a land that says tap, untap target attacking creature, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to and dealt by that creature this turn. So basically it just stops a creature from attacking. It literally just removes it from combat. That land, I believe Maze of Ith has been fluctuating around $20-$30 mark roughly, so hopefully, again, with this reprint, it'll come down a little bit more. And that's all we really want for these reprints, is reprint them to make the price go down so that way it's more accessible for newer players, because when newer players find out about these older cards that are really, really good and they see the price of them, they're like, wow, I don't want to spend that kind of money on this. Making more reprints, making it cheaper for these cards, makes it easier for newer players to get into the game. That's basically the bottom line. That's the biggest reason why we want reprints. Not to mention, some of the veteran players want reprints, so that way the card prices will go down, because we do like having multiple decks. And a lot of these cards are used in multiple decks. I can't afford to have a Manicrypt in 12 decks. I don't have that kind of money. I'm not made of money like that. So, what do you guys think? Is there any really, really big reprint that I missed in this video that you feel like I should have included? Is there anything that you're really disappointed about from the set, regardless of the price? More like, is there any cards that you wish they reprinted that they missed out on? My personal missed reprint was Damnation, because they reprinted Wrath of God, but they didn't give us Damnation, and they're the same card basically. One's in white, one's in black. That's the only difference. But yeah, that's all for today. So let me know down in the comments what you guys think, and I will see you guys next video.
Yeah.